Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss laryngotracheobronchitis. It is also known as croup. So we will discuss this topic under following headings. We will review in short the airway anatomy and the difference between adult and pediatric airway. Then we will define what is croup. We will look at its epidemiology, etiopathogenesis, clinical manifestations, diagnosis. We will see the differential diagnosis of croup, then how to manage a case of croup and its complications and prognosis. This is the slide showing pediatric and adult airway. Figure A is pediatric airway and figure B is adult airway. As you can see, the tongue occupies a major portion of the mouth in pediatric airway, whereas the proportion of area of mouth occupied by tongue in adult airway is considerably less. When we move further, we can see that the larynx is more anteriorly placed in case of pediatric age group as compared to adult airway. The epiglottis in pediatric patient is floppier and it is U or omega shaped, whereas the epiglottis in an adult is shorter and it is more firm. The airway or the larynx is more anterior and higher in pediatric age group, whereas in adult it is lower as compared to pediatric age group. The narrowest portion of the larynx is subglottis or the area just below the vocal cords in pediatric age group, whereas the narrowest portion of the airway in case of adult is at the level of vocal cords. The subglottic area in the pediatric age group corresponds to the cricoid ring or the cricoid cartilage, which is the narrowest portion of the pediatric airway. So, as you can see in this diagram, the pediatric airway is funnel shaped with the cricoid ring or the subglottic area being the most narrow part of pediatric airway, whereas the adult airway is cylindrical and the narrowest part of the adult airway being at the level of vocal cords. Laryngotracheobronchitis is also known as croup. The croup word originated from an Anglo-Saxon word cropan, that means to cry aloud. So, laryngotracheobronchitis or croup is common in young children. It refers to a heterogeneous group of mainly acute and infectious processes that lead to inflammation of larynx, trachea or bronchi, and it is characterized by bark like or brassy cough, which is also known as seal like cough, and hoarseness of voice, inspiratory stridor and respiratory distress. Inflammation involving the vocal cords and structures inferior to the cords is called laryngitis or laryngotracheitis or laryngotracheobronchitis, and the inflammation of the structures superior to the vocal cords, that is arytenoids, aryepiglottic folds which are known as false vocal cords, or the epiglottis, is collectively known as supraglottitis. Laryngotracheobronchitis is one of the most common causes of upper airway obstruction and acute respiratory difficulty in preschool children. Although croup can occur from young infant to adolescents and rarely in adults, it occurs most commonly from 6 months to 6 years of age. Peak incidence is seen in second year of life, and boys are more affected as compared to girls by a ratio of 3:2. It is more common during the season of fall and winter season, and that corresponds with the peak of infections of parainfluenza virus. Pathogens responsible for laryngotracheobronchitis are transmitted by airborne droplets or direct contact. Recurrent croup is 2 or more croup like episodes when seen in a child is defined as recurrent croup. Patients with recurrent croup have a higher incidence of asthma, allergies and gastroesophageal reflux. So, whenever you get a patient who has recurrent croup, you should be alert to look for comorbidities like asthma, allergies and gastroesophageal reflux. Laryngotracheobronchitis is a viral disease. It is predominantly caused by parainfluenza viruses type 1 and type 2. These viruses collectively are responsible for about 2/3 of the total cases of laryngotracheobronchitis. Other viruses involved include influenza A and B. The disease caused by influenza A is more severe as compared to the disease caused by parainfluenza virus type 1 and 2, though the parainfluenza viruses are more common. Other viruses involved are human respiratory syncytial virus, human metapneumovirus, adenovirus, coronaviruses, and in developing countries, especially in malnourished children, measles virus has also been implicated as a cause of laryngotracheobronchitis. In laryngotracheobronchitis, infection by involved virus causes mucosal inflammation and edema of upper respiratory tract, that is glottic area, subglottic area, trachea and the bronchi, and that leads to the narrowing of subglottic region, resulting in upper airway obstruction and the typical stridor. Now, what is a stridor? Stridor is a harsh, high pitched respiratory sound that is usually inspiratory but can be biphasic, and it is produced by turbulent airflow. It is not a diagnosis but a sign of upper airway obstruction. Swelling of vocal cords produces the hoarseness of voice. Inflammation of the larynx and trachea and is responsible for barking cough. Severity of symptoms may depend upon the baseline subglottic area and the extent of inflammatory reaction to the offending virus. Parainfluenza virus also enhances the mucosal edema by stimulating chloride secretion and suppressing sodium reabsorption. Influenza viruses cause a severe disease as compared to parainfluenza virus, as I already told you. So, this is a flow chart depicting the pathological changes which lead to ultimate clinical manifestations in a patient of croup. So, we will look at it stepwise. First of all, if you see here, whenever a pathogen, most commonly the parainfluenza virus type 1, initially colonizes the nasopharyngeal mucosa, there is an inflammatory cytokine release that leads to increased permeabilities of capillaries in the nasal mucosa, which further leads to leakage of protein and fluid into the surrounding tissue, causing nasal mucosa swelling and irritation, and these are responsible for prodromal symptoms of coryza, which is nasal mucus discharge, and nasal congestion. Systemic inflammatory cytokines lead to disruption of hypothalamic thermoregulation, and this causes fever. So, coryza, nasal congestion and fever, these constitute the prodromal symptoms of laryngotracheobronchitis, which last for 1 to 2 days. Next, what happens is the pathogen migrates down to the larynx and trachea, inflaming the respiratory endothelium there. Because of that, just like in the nasopharyngeal mucosa, the protein and the fluid leak in the surrounding tissue starts, and that leads to laryngeal swelling and irritation of vocal cords. And this laryngeal swelling and irritation of vocal cords is responsible for hoarseness of voice. So, hoarseness of voice is the typical symptom of laryngotracheobronchitis, which starts after initial few days of prodromal illness. Similarly, it can lead to swelling around the trachea and the tracheal wall, which is less rigid in young children, and hence it is more prone to collapse. So, because of the mucosal swelling and the physiological flexibility of the tracheal wall and a tendency to collapse, it leads to a narrowed trachea. A narrower tube, for example trachea, as you all know, causes an increase in flow velocity of air and decrease in pressure within it. How do we know that? We know it by our knowledge of physics, and it is known as Bernoulli's principle. Whenever through a hollow tube there is an increase in flow velocity, it will lead to decrease in pressure within it. So, in a narrow trachea, the flow of air gets turbulent and the flow velocity increases because of respiratory distress and agitation, and that leads to further decrease in pressure inside the trachea. So, a vacuum is created that collapses the airways distal to the narrowing, and that collapse of airways distal to the narrowing causes breathing across a narrow trachea that causes turbulent air streams and make a distinct sound. So, on expiration, naturally there is a obstruction, so expiration will be forceful. So, on forced expiration you will get barking cough. So, what is the pathophysiology behind barking cough? Breathing across a narrow trachea, that creates a turbulent flow, and that turbulent flow on forced expiration causes barking cough. How does a barking cough sounds like? That we will see in next slide. And same pathophysiology on inspiration causes stridor. So, stridor, as I already told you, is a harsh high pitched sound produced during inspiration. It can be biphasic in some other causes, but in case of croup it is mostly on inspiration. Further, there is increased work of breathing, and there is an increased effort by the child to ventilate the lungs because of airway obstruction, and that leads to use of accessory muscles, nasal flaring, chest wall indrawing, tachypnea. All these signs are known as respiratory distress. So, the typical symptoms of croup are hoarseness of voice, barking cough, stridor, and respiratory distress. So, now we will see how a croupy cough or the barking or seal like cough sounds like. A seal like cough is called when it sounds like the sound of a bark of a seal, which is an aquatic animal.
So first listen the croupy cough in a 11-month-old child. Here you might have heard a
clear inspiratory stridor and a barking or seal like cough. Symptoms of upper airway obstruction typically start in second half of night. And why is it so? Because there is a diurnal variation in the level of endogenous corticosteroids in our body. The level of steroids being highest between 6 to 8 am, and then as the day progresses it gradually decreases and reaches its lowest point between 9 to 12 am, and around 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock it remains at its lowest point and then again starts rising. So, this is the point where between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the night, when the corticosteroids are at their lowest level, during this time the symptoms of croup worsen and the child typically presents with croup symptoms in second half of night. These symptoms worsen on agitation. Whenever a child is coughing vigorously or crying, you may be able to appreciate stridor more clearly. The brassy cough may be more evident when the child is agitated, because agitation further causes turbulent flow and aggravates the symptoms. These symptoms usually subside in next 2-3 days of duration. A few patients may have symptoms up to 7 days of illness. So, these are the clinical manifestations and the pathophysiology behind these clinical manifestations. Now, how do we judge the severity of the disease? So, there are several scores to assess the severity of laryngotracheobronchitis in children. The most commonly used score is Wesley Croup score. It includes points or parameters like stridor, chest wall retractions, bilateral air entry, cyanosis at room air, mental status of the child, and based upon these parameters, the croup can be classified as mild, moderate, or severe. So, what happens? The stridor may be heard only when the child is agitated. A normal child who is not crying or coughing may not have stridor in mild croup. The chest wall retractions are minimal. Air entry is equal up to the bases on both sides of the chest. There is no cyanosis at room air. Mental state of the child is normal. Child is happy and is accepting feeds well. So, if these parameters are present, we classify the croup as mild croup, and such cases can be managed in emergency room on outpatient basis. In moderate croup, the stridor may be present at rest without any agitation. The chest wall retractions are marked. You can easily make out intercostal, subcostal, or suprasternal retractions. Air entry is decreased because of airway obstruction. Cyanosis is evident whenever the child is agitated, coughing, or crying. The child is fussy but can be consoled by parents. So, these features are suggestive of moderate severity. In severe croup, the child is lethargic. So, there may be stridor, but the child is lethargic and exhausted. So, in case of exhaustion, the chest wall retractions may not be very prominent because there is decreased respiratory effort of the child. Air entry because of airway obstruction is markedly decreased. Cyanosis is present at rest, and the child is restless because of hypoxia, and there is decreased level of consciousness again because of hypoxia. So, all cases of moderate and severe croup should be managed and monitored in emergency room, and based upon their subsequent progression, they can be shifted to or admitted to PICU or can be sent home by counseling the parents, which we will see in management. How do we diagnose a case of croup? The diagnosis of croup is essentially clinical. A typical acute onset of barking cough, stridor, breathing difficulty, and hoarseness of voice after 24 to 48 hours of a viral prodrome in children of 6 months to 3 years of age is almost diagnostic of laryngotracheal bronchitis. Blood investigations and X-ray of neck is not required for the diagnosis of croup in majority of the cases. Visualization of upper airway by endoscopy or bronchoscopy is rarely indicated, as it may trigger further edema in the subglottic area. Even the viral studies are not needed for the management of croup. Investigations are considered only when the presentation is atypical and other diagnosis is considered instead of laryngotracheal bronchitis. Whenever we do a X-ray, we find steeple sign or pencil tip sign. So, what is steeple sign? Because of the narrowing of subglottic area, the shadow of the trachea looks like the steeple of a church. The conical shadow of the trachea, this resembles a conical building which you have seen in any church. So, this is what is called as steeple, and the airway of the child in case of croup looks like a steeple on X-ray of neck, and it is also known as pencil tip sign. Now, coming to differential diagnosis. So, what are the differential diagnosis of croup? Bacterial tracheitis, epiglottitis, retro or parapharyngeal abscesses, tracheal or esophageal foreign body, angineurotic edema, vocal cord paralysis, and laryngeal diphtheria. These all can have similar presentation as of croup, and hence they need to be differentiated from croup. How can we differentiate them? Bacterial tracheitis is a bacterial illness. It occurs most commonly as a complication of croup, and it is caused because of staphylococcal infection. It presents as a acute sickness after a mild viral illness, characterized by high fever, respiratory distress, toxic look of the child, and when we try to manage it like a patient of a croup and nebulize with adrenaline, we may have no response to the adrenal nebulization. On X-ray neck, we will find ragged tracheal border and a membrane spanning the trachea. And how do we manage bacterial tracheitis? By broad spectrum IV antibiotics. Second differential is epiglottitis. So, epiglottitis, as we have seen, is a part of supraglottitis, that is the inflammation of supraglottic structures. It presents as sudden onset high grade fever in a child of 2 to 4 years of age. The child has difficulty in swallowing, and it is associated with drooling of saliva because of inflamed epiglottis, which is extremely painful. And to avoid this pain and discomfort, the child sits in sniffing position. What is sniffing position? The child supports his body forwards by both his forearms, and his neck is extended as if he is trying to sniff something. So, that is called sniffing position. So, that avoids the discomfort caused by epiglottitis. Epiglottitis is caused by Haemophilus influenza. It is the most common cause, but in this era of vaccination, when more and more child are getting vaccinated against Haemophilus influenza, in vaccinated children, instead of Haemophilus influenza, we are getting other pathogens as the more common cause of epiglottitis, which are Streptococcus pyogenes, Streptococcus pneumoniae, non-typable Haemophilus influenza, and Staphylococcus aureus. When we do a X-ray, what do we get? We get thumb sign in epiglottitis. What is thumb sign? As you can see here, the inflamed epiglottis looks like a thumb. So, this shadow of epiglottis looking like a thumb is known as thumb sign, which is seen on lateral view of X-ray neck. How do we manage a case of epiglottitis? By giving IV intravenous ceftriaxone. Now, retropharyngeal or parapharyngeal abscesses can also present with swallowing difficulty, stridor, and drooling of saliva. How can we differentiate it from laryngotracheobronchitis? There will be unilateral cervical lymphadenopathy. There will be torticollis and restricted neck movements in case of pharyngeal abscesses. X-ray neck will show a bulging soft tissue shadow in the posterior pharynx, and it has to be when we visualize the pharynx, direct visualization, indirect visualization also, we may be able to appreciate a bulge in the posterior pharynx. Treatment is surgical drainage and IV antibiotics. Tracheal foreign bodies are also very common in case of children. It can present as sudden onset stridor without fever and without barking cough. So, these are the differentiating features between tracheal foreign bodies and croup. A sudden onset stridor without fever or barking cough should alarm you to think of any foreign body in trachea. History of aspiration of foreign body may or may not be present, but on the basis of clinical features you should suspect tracheal foreign body. If the foreign body is radio opaque, it may be seen in X-ray. To confirm the diagnosis and to remove the foreign body, we have to do rigid bronchoscopy. Then angioneurotic edema, it can also present as rapid onset stridor, which may or may not be associated with dysphagia, urticarial rash, swelling of face and neck and lips, and there may be a history of allergen exposure, and there may be a past history of similar episodes. So, if you get such a presentation with a past history, think of angioneurotic edema. None of the investigations are useful in managing angioneurotic edema. Whenever you suspect it, you have to give adrenaline intravenously or subcutaneously, intravenous steroids and antihistaminics intravenously. Vocal cord paralysis can also present as stridor. The stridor in case of vocal cord paralysis will be biphasic. In case of unilateral vocal cord paralysis, the cry or the voice of the child will be weak and there will be no respiratory distress. In case of bilateral vocal cord paralysis, the quality of voice of the child will be good, but there will be severe respiratory distress. You can make the diagnosis by laryngoscopy, and then you have to identify the cause and treat the underlying cause. Laryngeal diphtheria, though uncommon, is still seen in our region, and it is characterized by gradual onset of fever, barking cough, stridor, which may or may not be associated with dysphagia. There will be a history of incomplete vaccination against diphtheria, and on examination you can see a typical diphtheric membrane which on detachment bleeds. It can be confirmed by Albert stain, and the treatment is penicillin and anti-diphtheric serum. Basic principles of treatment of a case of laryngotracheobronchitis are supportive care, corticosteroids and adrenaline. In supportive care, you should keep the child calm and comfortable as much as possible, because agitation and crying will cause further worsening of condition. It can be done by keeping the child in parent's lap. If the child is having respiratory difficulty or there is hypoxia, oxygen should be provided in a non-threatening manner. What is a non-threatening technique to provide oxygen to the child? It is called blow-by technique. Give the end of oxygen tubing in mother's hand and ask her to make a hand cup near the child's mouth and nose without touching the mouth and the nose. That is called blow-by technique of giving oxygen. Paracetamol may be useful for fever and discomfort in laryngotracheobronchitis. Corticosteroids are the mainstay of the treatment of laryngotracheobronchitis in children. They decrease the airway inflammation, mucosal edema and vascular permeability because of their potent vasoconstrictive and anti-inflammatory properties. They are effective in each severity of laryngotracheobronchitis and irrespective of the duration of the disease. the effects of steroid may be seen as early as 30 minutes of administration. So, what is the steroid of choice which is given? It is dexamethasone. It is given in a dose of 0.6 mg per kg orally or intramuscularly, a single dose. If oral or intramuscular steroid administration is not possible, nebulized budesonide can also be given. The dose is 2 milligram of nebulized budesonide as a single nebulization. Both nebulized and systemic steroids have similar efficacy. Adrenaline is given as a nebulization, either 0.5 ml of 2.25% racemic epinephrine in 3 ml of normal saline, or 3 to 5 ml of undiluted levoepinephrine can be given as a nebulization. The use of nebulized adrenaline, either racemic or levoepinephrine, is effective for treatment of laryngotracheobronchitis. Adrenaline acts through alpha adrenergic receptors and causes mucosal vasoconstriction and bronchial smooth muscle relaxation, resulting in decreased subglottic edema and decreased airway narrowing. There may be a rebound of symptoms within 2 to 4 hours of adrenaline nebulization, and patient should be monitored for rebound. If symptoms persist, adrenaline nebulization may be repeated every 2 hourly till improvement, or may be used more frequently if there is severe respiratory distress. Use of adrenaline is generally safe except for tachycardia, especially with multiple doses. Nebulized adrenaline is not recommended for home use because of possible rebound effects, and it is contraindicated in children with ventricular outlet obstruction, for example, tetralogy of Fallot. So, with these basic principles of management of croup, whenever a child presents with laryngotracheobronchitis in emergency, how will you approach that child? So, this is a flow chart giving us the approach. So, first you will assess the severity according to the Wesley's croup score, and if the child has mild croup, you should try to keep that child calm. You should give single dose of oral dexamethasone 0.6 mg per kg or a single nebulization of budesonide 2 milligram. Since the steroids may take time to act, therefore, the child should be kept in emergency room for monitoring for at least 4 hours. After 4 hours, if the clinical condition of the child improves, the child can be sent home and parent can be educated about the warning signs as to whenever they notice the warning signs, they have to come back to the emergency. If the child does not improve after 4 hours of single dose of steroids, or the child worsens, it should be treated as moderate laryngotracheobronchitis. So, whenever a case of moderate laryngotracheobronchitis presents in emergency, again you have to keep the child calm, give a single dose of oral dexamethasone or a single nebulization of budesonide and adrenaline nebulization. After giving single dose of steroid and adrenaline nebulization, you should monitor a case of moderate croup in emergency for at least 8 hours. After 8 hours, if the child improves, again the child can be sent home with the warning signs being explained to the parents. If the child does not improve or worsens, the child should be admitted and repeat adrenaline nebulization should be given hourly, and child should be monitored continuously. Whenever a case of severe laryngotracheobronchitis presents to the emergency, the child should be kept calm. Oxygen must be administered by blow by technique. Oral or intramuscular dexamethasone can be given as a single dose 0.6 mg per kg, or nebulization of budesonide 2 mg should be given if dexamethasone administration is not possible, plus one nebulization of adrenaline should be given. After doing all this, the child should be immediately admitted and adrenaline should be repeated hourly, and child should be continuously monitored. And even after hourly administration of adrenaline, if the response remains poor or the child becomes hypoxic or further worsens, the child should be shifted to PICU for intensive care. So, this is how you should approach a child of laryngotracheobronchitis in emergency. Now, coming to complications, as we have seen in differential diagnosis, one of the complications of laryngotracheobronchitis is bacterial tracheitis. It may follow laryngotracheobronchitis and is characterized by high grade fever, toxic look and worsening respiratory distress despite treatment being given for laryngotracheobronchitis. So, coming to prognosis, most of the cases of laryngotracheobronchitis are mild in severity and can be managed on outpatient basis with single dose oral dexamethasone. Community based studies have shown that less than 5% of children need admission for laryngotracheobronchitis. About 1 to 3% of children admitted with laryngotracheobronchitis require intubation, and the death due to laryngotracheobronchitis is very rare. Only a few case reports of death due to LTB has been reported till now. So, overall most of the cases are mild and if managed well have a very good prognosis. So, this was all about laryngotracheobronchitis. Thank you all for patient listening and happy learning.